this program. Now, there's a lot of things I could in ZBrush. I could have painted the model, textured in, whatever. But I'm showing at a very basic level for someone who's never used these products what they can do. Okay, so there's my guy. Turntable him a bit. Let's say I want him at that. Just want him right there. Okay, I can change my palette. I can make him green because I want him to be an orc. Okay, I often just go red. I go to environment and I just kind of maybe up the brightness and contrast and change my environment light so give me a bit more light and shadow like that, so it's a bit more dynamic, right? Now, that seems set up in Keyshot, so I'll go Save As again. I go into my student character design. So now I have all my source files that go. So I go Shrek Goblin, save, and he's going to save as a .bit, which is the rendering file. So if this is my character, I want to make character cards or something like this, or work on him later on again. I'm going to go press render, and I'm going to do a half render, which is at 3000 by 315. I would often do one or the two of these. But for the purpose of the video, let's go even lower. Let's go to 1280 by 1050. And I press clown because that gives me an alpha, which is a stencil of the character that I can actually mask out in Photoshop, the shadows and stuff. And I press render. I save mine as a TIFF, so I have no background. Okay, I'm just going to let that render. You can see it's rendering very fast because I created my character on a low resolution. So let that render out. And while I'm letting it render, I have Photoshop open, ready to go. Okay. Just close down some previous projects. Rendered 88, 94. So if I went to 7,000 on this with loads, if I had translucent layers and different textures, it could take something like up to 6 hours to do a model with the metallics and those different things on this model. But he's nice. For the purpose of a beginner level introduction to this and for use in Photoshop for drawing and for different things, this is perfect. Okay. Now, to have more fun with this guy before we render him out, I have downloaded some really nice light effects. So I love this blue rim light. Okay, so if I drag my blue rim light onto my model, I get some nice highlights and I render again. And I'm rendering all of the layers I need to be able to make my final creature in Photoshop. So rendering away there, 50%. As you can see, it's quite quick because I'm working small. Now, yes, I'm making this maybe look easy to someone who doesn't draw, but the software is quite expensive. Okay, so we're looking at Jazz being cheap enough, 40 quid for those basic things. I think it was about 20 bucks again for the sword pack and 20 for the Spartan pack I used for his clothes. And it cost me about 1,400 euros for ZBrush and the Keyshot Bridge and Keyshot for ZBrush. My Photoshop license is about $200 per year as well on top of that because that's a subscription. Okay, so these are the things you need to consider. So that's done. And now if I go to miscellaneous, if I don't want to do a line drawing, if I'm in Photoshop, like, oh, you know what, I can draw over this, but I want more practice, I'm going to miscellaneous. And I can actually put on a cartoon like occlusion is one. Or I can go shaded wireframe, flat gray, matte white, infrared, plastic clouds, soap bubble, X-ray, opaque, and go to toon. That's what I want to go. I'm going to go shaded toon, right? And shaded toon means I got a black and white line drawn with shade of my character, and I'm going to render that out too. This will render hopefully very fast because it's just a bit of line. Okay, so now I have 3 layers. I'm going to bring these to Photoshop. So I'm just going to quit Keyshot, save my orc, goblin, punk dude, and I'm going to go Photoshop. I'm working on CC 2019, the latest version. Go to my character design. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm going to my renders file. My renders file has all my latest renders. So I'm going to grab the first one and I'll drag it in, which is my red one, open, Photoshop, and there he is, ready to go. Okay, I'll drag in one of my passes here. They're all the same, but if I drag in one, this is my mask that I would use later, and that mask is used to take out any shadows that I do not need in the model. So create a mask in Photoshop by selecting this part. Okay, I'm going way too fast now. Okay, in Photoshop, delete my layer mask, delete it. So I've dragged in this layer and it fits because it's what's called a smart layer. So they're all the same size, so it directly fits on top. I use a button here called the Magic Wand tool, which selects any solid color. And then I select this button here, which is Add Mask. But I want to add the mask, so I turned off the opacity on my top layer, reselected my bottom layer, the opacity on that one, and it's gotten rid of any shadows that I don't see because it's a transparent background, but would be there. And now I'll drag in my blue. Here's my blue version of the guy, which is my light effect, and I bring in my line draw. Okay, now they're all on top of each other. I'm going to press Command or Control on the Mac, select that mask, click on my layer and recreate the mask and do it again. When I press Control on a PC or Command on the Mac, that little select button comes up there, little square, and it lets me click there, and I get these what are called marching ants around the figure, which means he's selected, and I make another mask. Another all mask means there's no shadows underneath, right? And here's the fun bit. The blue, I'm going to set on this button here is actually called blend modes. You'll see in Photoshop magazines they talk about blend modes, but you'll never see a button called blend modes. This is it. This is the button. So I'm going to go normal. I'm going to set that to soft light. And you didn't see it because I was on the wrong layer. Okay, so I'm going to start that again. So normal. So top layer, I'm going to set that to soft light. So now it has blended the line drawn over the other layer, okay, and I'm going to set that light effect to soft light over my red. So now there's my goblin, all lit up, lovely and red, okay. And I'm going to take my goblin, I'm going to duplicate him. I go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. This is one of my favorite tricks for getting good shadows. And I'm going to press soft light with the shadowed one, and now you get more shadow, okay. Now we're looking at the goblin going, he's not green, so what do? I want a green goblin. So I'll create a new layer. Okay, I'm going to grab all of these layers together and go by pressing Command, click, 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 select them all. Layer, duplicate layers, OK. And layer, merge. So I have a copy of all these layers now layered into one on top. And I just deselected the edge by pressing Command D or Select, Deselect. Okay. And I'm going to go Save As, Shrek Goblin, PSD, which is Photoshop file, and make sure he's saved in the same character design folder because my renders are in a separate folder within application support on a Mac. So there's my goblin, okay? For someone who doesn't draw 20 minutes and maybe they've never done 3D, I have a goblin pretty fast, okay? And I'm going to go to Adjustments, Color Balance on this new top goblin, and I'm going to go add a bit of green, get a bit of cyan, bit of yellow. Now he's looking more goblin-y. Perfect. And I'm going to drop in a white background, okay? So I'm going to create a new layer, put it down the back, and this is where the fun texturing part in Photoshop for me comes in as an artist, as a kind of concept artist. So if I drop in white behind him, you can see the shadows are all turned off here on his feet. If I was to go back here to my original layer and go disable layer mask, shadows might pop back on, right? Okay, so there's my goblin. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go give him a texture. So I have texture files all down. These are just photos I've taken on my iPhone of concrete, of moss, that's like glue under a carpet. I have walls, paint. From Goblin, this is an old wall from an Irish castle, and I'm going to throw this on top of my guy. So I've dragged it on. It's a smart layer again. Now I'm going to put it on top over my model, and I'm going to press soft light again. And I'm going to press Edit, Free Transform, which means that I can drag the side of it and make it smaller. I can literally fit it on his body anywhere I want to create a texture. Now this little symbol here means it's got a smart layer, which means I can't actually rub it out with the normal tools. I can only put a mask on it like these to edit it. So I'll click on the gray bar and press rasterize, which means now and go in here, and with the eraser tool on a big soft brush, we can get into more complicated mask tools later, but this is a basic tool for it. And I can go in here with a nice soft round brush and just rub out bits I don't want on the model. So I can give him like slimy skin there using a bit of stone, not slimy here. Okay. Now where the drawing comes in, if you want to practice, is I create a new layer. I'm going to call it line drawing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my colors here, true black, and with my brushes again, I'm going to create a very small a dark brush on top, and literally draw with like a brush that's like 2 or 3 pixels, and draw in line drawing around it. Now I could continue on this and make a whole texture video for you, but that'd be 90 minutes long. I'm going to keep this as brief as possible. I'll change that to white just to light up his eyes, and maybe accentuate his mouth, bit of line drawn around the nose, the eyes, and I could draw in these all day long. Change to white and give a bit of highlight on this side. And that is a basic starting point for creating characters using free software and some other 3D software where you've never drawn in your life, but you can start creating your models for D&D or character design for any other game. Now I was just say one thing about DAZ. They have very strict rules if you read their end user license agreement or EULA about using these models for 3D print, so I would not attempt that without reading that first. Okay, but that is how to create a very basic model with no previous drawing experience and using just DAZ for presets into ZBrush, KeyShot, and finally Photoshop. And there we have it, finished, very simple line drawing over it of my goblin.